what ancient humans actually did. When someone died, someone you love stops breathing and your body doesn't know what to do. You feel the weight in your chest. The silence in the room becomes unbearable. You want to call someone. You want to look away. You want them to move again. But here's the strange part. That exact feeling, that precise panic mixed with disbelief, is not new to you at all. Your ancestors felt it too. And what they did about it reveals something profound about what it means to be human. Today, when death happens, you follow a script written by your culture. You call a funeral home. You pick flowers. You write something for a program. You sit in rows facing the same direction. But the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, you would have done something completely different. And the reason you didn't has everything to do with why you're alive right now. Let's start with what we know. We know ancient humans buried their dead. Archaeologists have found graves dating back over 100,000 years. But it's not the burial itself that matters. It's what they put inside those graves. Shells, flowers, ochre, a red iron oxide pigment, tools, food, bones of animals that meant something. These weren't accidents. These weren't garbage dumps. These were choices. In 2002, archaeologist Thomas Hyam and his team excavated a Neanderthal burial site called La Ferracie in southwestern France. What they found was stunning. A Neanderthal child, around 5 years old, had been carefully placed in a shallow pit. The skeleton showed signs of intentional positioning. Around the body, they found stone tools arranged in patterns, not scattered. Arranged. That takes time. That takes intention. That takes something. Words don't quite capture. It takes meaning. But here's what makes this even stranger. When Neanderthals died, they died in a world with predators. They died in a world where food was scarce. They died in a world where survival margins were razor thin. And yet, instead of leaving the body where it fell, they stopped. They chose to bury it. They chose to mark it. They chose to treat death as something that mattered. They chose ritual. Your modern brain assumes ritual is inefficient. Ritual doesn't help. Ritual doesn't bring the person back. Ritual doesn't fill your stomach or sharpen your spear. But your brain is missing the point. Ritual doesn't exist to change the world outside. Ritual exists to change the world inside your mind. And that's exactly what it did. When your ancestors buried the dead with care, they weren't trying to preserve the body. They didn't have the chemistry to do that. They were doing something far more sophisticated. They were creating a moment where grief became organized, where chaos became containable, where the impossible loss could be held inside a shape made of stone and earth and time. By around 70,000 years ago, burials became more elaborate. Archaeologist Ian Hodder spent decades excavating Çatalhöyük, one of the first towns in human history, in modern-day Turkey. What he discovered was this: people were being buried under the floors of their homes. Deliberately. Not all people. Different groups, different ages, different arrangements. But the pattern was clear. Death wasn't something you hid from. Death was something you lived with. Literally, you lived above your dead. And here's where it gets counterintuitive. Societies with more elaborate burial rituals weren't necessarily societies with more time or more resources. They were sometimes the poorest societies. Because ritual isn't a luxury. It's a technology. It's a technology for managing the unbearable. It's a technology for transforming raw grief into something your brain can process. Grief specialist Thomas Creed published research showing that when people participate in structured rituals after loss, any ritual, doesn't matter which culture or religion, their cortisol levels actually drop. Your nervous system calms. Not because the person comes back, not because the ritual works magic, but because when your mind has a shape to follow, when your body has a place to go and actions to perform, your amygdala stops firing on all cylinders. The ritual doesn't deny the pain. The ritual contains it. Think about what happens when you don't have that container. Think about what happens when someone dies and you don't know what to do. You freeze. You can't eat. You can't sleep. You can't think. That's not weakness. That's your neural hardware crashing because something fundamental has been broken and no one gave you a script to follow. You're left alone with the impossible. But when your ancestors decided to bury their dead with care, they invented something that all of us still need. They decided that death deserves attention, that the person who died deserves to be acknowledged as having mattered, that the people left behind deserve a moment where they can all stop and say together, "This happened. This was real. This person existed." The specific forms changed constantly. Different cultures invented different rituals. Some burned the body. Some exposed it to birds. Some kept the bones and wore them. Some painted the dead. The anthropological record is staggeringly diverse, but the function stayed the same. The ritual always served the same purpose. The ritual always said, "We are stopping time to acknowledge this loss. We are not pretending this didn't happen. We are not running away from it. We are turning toward it together." This is why, even today, when grief hits you with its full force, you find yourself reaching for ritual. You don't know why. You just know that you need to do something. You need to gather people. You need to say words. You need to mark the moment. You need it to mean something. And that reaching, that instinct, comes from 100,000 years of your ancestors learning that the most human thing you can do in the face of death is to stop and say, "We are here. We are together. We are witnessing this." When you eventually arrange flowers and sit in rows and write your words and place your hand on someone's shoulder at a funeral, you're doing something older than language. You're participating in a technology so old and so essential that your species developed it before you could even speak clearly. You're doing what humans do when the world breaks. You're building a shape strong enough to hold the breaking. You're saying that death, that terrible, impossible, unchangeable fact, still deserves to be seen and felt and named. And maybe that's why, even though science has advanced past where your ancestors could have imagined, and even though you understand brain chemistry and neural networks and the precise mechanics of mortality, you still gather in silent rows when someone dies. Not because ritual changes the fact of death, but because ritual acknowledges that the fact of death matters more than anything else. It says, "This person lived. This person meant something," and we stopped the whole world to say it. That's what ancient humans did when someone died. They stopped. And by stopping, they created something that transformed grief from annihilation into meaning. And that, it turns out, is the most human response to death there is. It's the response that still lives inside you when someone you love stops breathing and you don't know what to do. You reach for ritual. You reach for the shape your ancestors invented. You reach to say the only thing that matters in that moment, they were here, and we saw them.